This week on the Faculty Factory podcast.
How do we then transition to new people, bring in new and different skills? We've always been about having people with different skill sets because we think that makes us stronger because we are so different, and that's going to continue. So we've got a lot of good things to look forward to with our office developing and growing and bringing in new people.
Change it's so disruptive, but it's so necessary. And I just think just stirring the pot and getting things, excited and new and putting in new ingredients, you just have to reinvigorate. I mean, like you said, you've been in your role for 9 years. And so I would actually get nervous if we had the same all the time, because then I'm starting to think we may become irrelevant, right? A new generation's coming up and new tools and resources and techniques, and medicine is changing so fast that we have to keep up with the way our faculty learn and want information. Welcome back to the Faculty Factory podcast. On today's episode, we have Kathy Pipitone from the University of Mississippi Medical Center. She's the Director of Faculty Affairs in the Office of Faculty Affairs. Hi, Kathy. How you doing today?
Hey, good morning. Doing great.
Can you kind of trace back the history of your career as the Director of Faculty Affairs now?
Yeah, so this started, I guess, back in 2009. Around there, I was in the role of the training manager and customer service liaison in administrative affairs. And so in that role, I did soft skills training for all of the people that were under administrative affairs at that time. And there were probably about 400 people in the different departments. And in that customer service liaison role, went around to find out from the different people on campus what the issues were with the different services that were under administrative affairs. How could we do things differently, better, and that type of thing. And at that time, our vice dean of the School of Medicine, Luann Woodward, who just happens to now be our dean and vice chancellor for the entire school, she was concerned about faculty leaving and faculty that were coming to the University of Mississippi Medical Center, and they weren't staying long. They were leaving because they had bad experiences. So she had heard about faculty onboarding and thought maybe that's what we need to do, but they really didn't have any area or office to look into that. So another lady, Linda Barker, and I, that were both in this customer service liaison employee manager training role, were loaned to her for 3 months to work on this project, to look at why our faculty are leaving and what can we do differently. How do we do a faculty onboarding? So we started from ground zero and started interviewing new faculty and their experiences with coming to the medical center, what went well, what could have gone better. And we found that the majority of departments did not really have a very organized way of bringing their faculty in. In some cases, faculty were getting in trouble by the Office of Compliance because compliance found out about them through a human resources report that came out like a month and a half after they were hired. So they were doing things inappropriately that they couldn't bill for, but they didn't know because they'd never been trained. People didn't have computers, logins, passwords. They got to the medical center, didn't have an office set up. So there was a lot of frustrating things for the faculty. And so in interviewing those people, looking at best practices, we looked at different websites that were around at that time for faculty affairs offices, and had determined that in order for us as a medical center and an organization to do things better for faculty, we really needed people that took care of the faculty full time. That was our recommendation. And so we submitted those recommendations, and then our vice dean, Luann Woodward, had determined that, okay, we need to create this office of people that are doing this. So she asked, would I be interested in starting the office with this other lady? And we said yes. And about that same time, Patrick Smith was in the family medicine. He was a psychologist, and they asked him to be an associate dean for faculty affairs because they were going to create this office. And so that is what they did. They hired the two of us. They hired Patrick, and we worked on our own for several months, and then they ended up putting us together. And we, at that time, then formed the Office of Faculty Affairs in about 2009.
So you mean to tell me this is just a fascinating story that before that time, faculty, it sounds like the departments just were on their own and hired people and brought them in and got them running. There was no standardization of anything, of any type, so there was no systematic organization through the HR. So I'm assuming that that's the case, that everybody was on their own hiring people, and there was this just huge level of heterogeneity in training or not training or resources or tools or, as you said, compliance or computers, that there probably wasn't a lot organized for faculty development or promotion and tenure or anything like that.
That is correct. And so human resources did know when faculty were coming. They were informed by the department. At that time, faculty could be hired any day of the week. They did go through human resources to get their I-9 done and sign contracts, but they signed a waiver that they did not have to go through any type of orientation or onboarding because they were faculty. So they were basically kind of above that. But we did realize through that, then they got nothing. You had, frontline minimum wage people who were coming into the organization who were better trained and more knowledgeable on what they needed to do, simply because they had processes in place for them going through the faculty, going through the employee orientation. So yes, it was very, some departments did it pretty well, but there was no consistency, and promotion and tenure was done out of our vice chancellor's office, but it was very non-transparent. So left a lot of room for improvement.
Wow, how frustrating for the faculty and for the staff, for everyone, thinking, oh my gosh, we have a whole new crop of people. Oh, geez, now we have to train these docs up how to do things.
Right, wow. That is correct.
So that was a lot of work to build up that whole office. Now, other than Patrick Smith, who we've already talked to on the Faculty Factory podcast, who else is in your office then? So is it still Linda Barker with you?
No, she was with us a couple years, and when she retired, at that time they changed the title of her role, and Johnson George was then brought in, and Johnson had a project manager background, and he was in information systems before, so he was brought in as a director of, I'm trying to think of his title at that time. It was more of a project manager type of role, though, looking at design of the office and that type of thing. And Johnson has since left. He was promoted in January, moved to the University of Texas in Houston at the McGovern School of Medicine, and he is now an associate. Let's see, what is his title now? Is higher than the title that he was here. He's, I think, an executive director for faculty affairs, but he's over a number of people and has a lot of room to grow there through their system. So when he left, we currently did change that role that he was in, and now it is going to be a director for faculty development. And so we're in the process of hiring someone right now to be in that role.
So, but currently then it's just you and Patrick.
Yeah, it's Patrick and I. We do have under Patrick, so there is that open role for faculty development, myself. We do have a director of leadership recruiting, and we have a recruiter that is under that director. Now, they do some faculty recruiting as far as leaders go. They do chair searches. They do when we have deans, they're doing dean searches and that type of thing, but they also do other high-level leadership recruiting on the campus, and then they help departments with best practices for faculty, but they're not hiring the majority of faculty that are coming in, but they do fall under our office. Then we have a project manager position and two administrative assistants. This is relatively new. we have had 2 administrative assistants for the past several months. One of those ladies is moving into the project manager role, and then we'll be filling another position. What we did realize is that Johnson and I were doing a lot of transactional work that could be done by other people. And so the goal is to move some of that transactional work to our administrative staff working with us, so then we can look at what are other things within faculty affairs, faculty development that we need to work on at a higher level and have the time to actually develop those things.
It's so interesting how everybody has a different organizational structure in their offices of faculty development, office of faculty affairs. And I just find it so fascinating to see how each institution is so unique and has built a toolkit of resources purposely for that, that home institution, that school. Like this is the first time I've heard of someone having a director of leadership recruiting in faculty affairs who is looking at those things. So that's the first for me.
Right. And I do think it's in a lot of cases those roles are under human resources, but it had started from us doing chair searches on the campus, and because they were done so well, then organizationally they determined that, okay, your office needs to continue to do that on a broader range, I guess, so to speak.
See what happens when you do something well, right?
That's right. That is right.
What's happening in Mississippi that you are excited about or wanted to talk about today with our community?
Well, one of the things I think we do that I believe is pretty unique in talking with other offices around the country in faculty affairs is that we do our faculty onboarding every other week. A lot of people do it monthly or quarterly. Some people even only do it once a year. We do it every other week as long as we have faculty starting, and we do have faculty start dates that are every other week. So I think that's pretty unique and does help us get our faculty acclimated from the very beginning. So we feel it's important. We do it whether we have one new faculty member or, in July when we have large groups of, 25 to 40 or so. Another thing we're doing is facilitation. We offer facilitation services for faculty retreats for departments, which I think is somewhat unique to what we're doing. We're also going to start looking at offboarding, and we've not gotten into that very deeply, but feel that we don't really do the best job in that, but I think that's a good opportunity to look at continuity and having faculty know that we are there for the entire faculty life cycle, from when they're first recruited and onboarded, working with them through their promotion and tenure, and then when they're leaving to have it be a smooth transition and help them with succession planning and, how do you try to keep faculty who want to retire but have all this knowledge base somewhat involved or, again, plan for succession.
Now, that's fascinating. Patrick did talk with us about the faculty onboarding every other week, and I almost fell off my chair because I thought that was a huge lift to do that every other week. As you mentioned, we are one of those schools that does it once a year. We do it in October and have over 100 people sit there, and some of them may have been there at Hopkins a week. Some may have been there almost a year. And some had been doing their training there. So, and some had by that time will have had departmental level orientation. So you're right, it's kind of a hit and miss, and it's an all day thing. But I can't believe that you folks do that every other week. And I'm so curious to hear more. Can you talk more about offboarding? I know you said it's kind of new and you're getting into it, but how did this come up? What brought this to your attention that needed programmatic investment in a whole system versus what we do is we offer exit interview opportunities for our faculty who leave, and frankly, less than 20% take us up on that offer to do either an online exit interview, a telephone interview, or an in-person exit interview. So I'm curious to hear more about offboarding because that is something new to the Faculty Factory podcast anyway.
Right. Well, and we're doing something very similar, it sounds like, to what you're doing now. We do what we call a transition feedback interview, where when we find out faculty are leaving and have officially resigned through human resources, we get an email, and then our administrative people contact their office to set up a meeting with either Patrick or I to do a formal exit interview, or they can do it online. We do have a link we can send to them in looking at trends as to why people are leaving. Every now and then we will have something, though, that's not a trend, but it's important enough to where we do need to investigate, this is something that happened and that could be problematic. But one of the things that happened over the past year, there was a compliance group that were looking at, people leaving, faculty specifically, and a lot of areas were not informed about it, although they're getting this email. But we were looking at how can we organizationally make sure that faculty have, signed off on records that they need to sign off on, that they've done succession planning, that I would even envision how are the departments making sure that if they're leaving, are patients then being referred to other people. I don't know how detailed we're going to get into it, but I think there's a lot of room for what could be done or sharing best practices with the different departments. We are now faculty affairs not only for the School of Medicine, but for all schools on the campus, although the bulk of our faculty are in the School of Medicine. So it's a large undertaking. Vicki Skinner, who was in our office as a project manager before moving on to become the director of continuing health professional education, she had interviewed a lot of different people on campus to see what is necessary. And so I'm going to go back through all of her notes and kind of reinvigorate that effort and see what we can do. So I'll share more as we learn more.
So complicated because similar to your process, we find out faculty are leaving after a monthly, it's called our advisory board of the medical faculty. And that advisory board of the medical faculty is all the department directors, or chair, the dean. So once a month, it's the dean and all the higher level executives and all those department directors. And that is when departures are announced, and it goes to our registrar's office. And then we get a monthly data dump of faculty who are leaving. But the strange thing is, again, it's all the devil's in the details, is that sometimes by the time after this monthly meeting and then the monthly download, faculty have already left by the time we get that information, or due to a number of reasons. The departments themselves may not find out till too late, or they don't let the advisory board know, and then the registrar's trying to clean up some information. It's a really just a goofy process for us that we'll try to contact people and they'll say, well, I left 4 months ago. And so it's so frustrating to get at what, you're trying to get at this, offboarding and especially transitioning. How do you help people develop succession plans if they're already 1 foot out the door or already driving across the country, moving? And so that kind of speaks to, we have to maybe back that cart up some. And as we all develop these kind of systems for transitioning, that we build that into our repertoire so people know that if they're starting to think about transitioning, that we can help them do that. And then you add the whole other layer, Kathy, I know you know about our late career faculty services. What about people who aren't just leaving for another job, but they're wanting to transition out of full-time employment? So how can we help them transition into part-time, or as you mentioned, having all that institutional memory and that wealth of experience that they can still contribute, but dial that back a bit. So I think there's lots of opportunity, and our system, we have to get better, I think, at least we do, at data and communicating moves so that we can train for things and do a good job of succession planning before people are out the door.
Right. Key is how do we make faculty feel comfortable enough to talk about it early on, and that it's not, okay, they're leaving, we're going to kick them to the curb, or people feel there's almost retribution, so to speak. How do we make them feel comfortable to where they can talk about it, and if they know that we can work with them on transition? So it's going to be an interesting journey. I think it would be a great thing to present to the GFA once we can find some practices that'll work.
Can you tell us a little bit more about your faculty departmental retreats? You mentioned that, and we, I guess since I've been at Hopkins almost 6 years, I've been asked maybe a half a dozen times, do you know anybody who facilitates retreats? And And I always offer, because I enjoy that. I'm an, off the chart extrovert. So I love getting people together and having fun. So I enjoy that retreat planning process. However, I guess a lot of that work is done by our organizational development. We have an OD group. And so they have expertise in that area. So I don't get a lot of that. And then I find out departments have had retreats or divisions have had retreats, but then they contract with someone from outside. So how have you built up that whole toolkit there?
My master's degree is in workforce training and development, so that's part of how I first got involved in it. And then Vicki Skinner, who was working in our office in that project manager role, she is in the military, and she does training for the military. So that's one of the reasons why we were able to first start doing this, is she and I both felt comfortable working with departments on the facilitation, but we also saw the need, like you were just speaking of, when departments were, paying astronomical fees to hire someone to come in from the outside to do some things that we thought, if we know it far enough ahead of time, we can actually help them do that. And so, what we would do is meet with departments, find out, when they're having or planning to have their retreat, give them some best practices for, planning ahead of time, what it could look like, and depending upon if they had a department that people got along, or say it's a new chair and they think there's going to be some discord, different type of exercises and maybe icebreaker type of things to get people on the understanding that, we're all in this together type thing. So depending upon what they needed, we would work with them on that. And then actually on the day of the event, be there to help make sure things run smoothly. If things got off track, keep them on track. That's one of the things that we would let them know ahead of time. We will be responsible for the timekeeping of it. In some cases, we were scribes as far as with flip chart paper. We have found, though, it's better if we put the different people that are there in charge of that, and then at the end of the day, collect it, give it back to them, and then they take it back. So we're there kind of to more help manage it so that everybody in their department can be involved in addition to the chair, and they're not having to manage it, so to speak. But we're very upfront that we do want the departments to know that the chairs ultimately are responsible for the department, and making sure that, people show up, that they will follow up on the information that they gather to actually do something with it. So it's not, I guess, a futile, purpose for getting together. But it's worked out pretty well, and news kind of travels. And when Patrick meets with the different chairs on different issues, and a lot of times he'll say, well, have you thought about getting your people together? And sometimes they haven't, sometimes they haven't. But so that's kind of how that came to be.
You mentioned follow-up and how, it's always frustrating when you put some effort into something and then ideas happen and then nothing gets implemented. So I'm curious, can you think of an example of where there were some, resolutions or suggestions, and what was the level of your contribution in that? So when you said you take the flip chart paper, I imagine you're then documenting something, and then you give a little report back, or how does that look in terms of your nudging them or helping them after the fact to implement the things, or are they kind of basically on their own, and then you really don't know if they implemented those actions?
We really have not had a lot of follow-up with that. I have had departments where we did departmental retreat, and we've taken the information that you helped us with. We're doing things, and now we want to have another one to see how we've done since then. Part of that is also Patrick, when he meets with the different chairs, talking with them, and he tries to also recommend that they have like a 6-month follow-up to see, okay, how did we do? And also letting the faculty know that this is not just a one-time thing, because we felt we needed to meet. But we probably, as far as follow-up, that would be something that we could actually try to implement and put into place, is letting them know, okay, in 3 months, 6 months, we're going to follow up to see how things are going. We've kind of heard about it informally, but we're kind of, I would say, more at the beginning stages. We've been doing this for the past couple of years, but it's not been really a long-term thing yet.
I don't do any follow-up, frankly. I mean, in the past, the few that I've done, I've written up the flip chart paper, made some observations, some recommendations, and then I'd hand it over, and that's it. And so I really don't do any follow-up either. And they're always kind of, as much as I love them, they're kind of, borderline uncomfortable because, you always have that group of faculty members there who are there under duress. They're like prisoners of war. They're so angry that they're there. There's that level of skepticism. And so I always that is like a challenge to me. Those tough nuts, I want to make sure they laugh and enjoy themselves and see value. And I was just thinking as you're talking, the last retreat I did was a Saturday morning. I think we were there from 7 till 2 with surgeons. And so we said, number one, recommendation, what do you want? And they did this little poll, and the number one recommendation is no retreats on Saturdays.
Oh, gosh.
Understandable. So there's always that kind of conflict of, well, we're not getting paid to be here, and this is taking away from family time, and you all talk about joy in medicine and work-life balance, and here we are on a Saturday morning, and you're making us do these things, and so you kind of feel it's this, this sweet, sour kind of mix of, it's a tough thing to manage when you have that crowd of like, I feel sorry for you, and yet this is important work, and yeah, you're right. We shouldn't do it on a Saturday, but how else are you going to fit in all the schedules? And oh boy.
That is right. That is true.
Now you said there are lots of other schools or many other schools. How many other schools are there in Mississippi Medical Center?
Well, we're the only medical school in Mississippi.
But you said faculty affairs for the other schools also. So are there others like graduate school or health sciences school or nursing school or public health school?
Right. So the other schools on our campus, we have a school of nursing, a school of dentistry, a school of health-related professions, a school of population health, and then we do have graduate studies, which is not its own school, so to speak. It's a program, but the faculty in graduate studies are actually faculty from primarily our School of Medicine that are within that school. And our school of population health is relatively new. That has brought some challenges because, we've talked about in the GFA about how do you define faculty? Right. Well, with our school of population health, their faculty in a lot of cases are very non-traditional. And so they don't really fit our mold of assistant, associate, and professor and all, because in a lot of cases they don't have a terminal degree. And so we've had to be somewhat creative in working with them. But I do think, across the country and looking at faculty, we're probably going to have more and more of that depending upon programs that come in. But so that's been a little bit of a challenge. But, in working with the different schools, we're brought, it's brought to our attention that we have a lot of gray. Sometimes it's not, this is the way it is, or that's not the way it is, but we have to look at things individually to look at, okay, what should we be doing, and should we be doing things differently in this particular instance, so to speak.
Yeah, you're right. I can see a lot of commonalities. Surely all the faculty would have to have the similar, understanding of what your institution, all the values that are important to you and your mission and code of conduct. And then you get into basic faculty development. I can see that there'd be commonalities about leadership and mentoring and communication and teamwork and difficult conversation. So a lot of that would be probably transferable. But yeah, there's probably so many nuances about promotion and getting different positions that would be so nuanced. That would be difficult.
Yeah, so it's going to be interesting.
Any interesting stories you'd like to share about anything that's happening lately or on the horizon, or things you're looking forward to?
Well, I think we're really looking forward to having this new director of faculty development, because we have not historically had that centered in our office. When Vicki was in the role as project manager, she, for a year, actually went around interviewing and doing focus groups on our campus of what do we need to do as far as faculty development goes. We do have some faculty development as far as teaching goes through our academic affairs that Rob Rockhold does, which is great for the organization. But there's not really been a hub for faculty development. And so I think there's a lot of opportunity there, and it's been very necessary, and people need it, and we know they need it. And so we're looking forward to bringing in someone to do that.
Now, are you hiring internally for that, or is there an external announcement for folks listening that there's a posting outside? It's going to be 100% FTE, or how's that going to go?
It's going to be 100% FTE. We have, I think it was posted externally, but the process has closed, so they do have some candidates that are in the process of being interviewed. So it's going to, like I said, be new and different. That person will also be working with our standpoint data, promotions and tenure. A lot of things that Johnson was doing are folding into that, in addition to expanding to be, I guess, more specific. Although when Patrick in our office looked at that role, a lot of what Johnson was doing is related to development, faculty development. So I think it's going to fold in nicely. So, we're interested in looking at that. Another thing I think that has kind of evolved, we had so much continuity of people within our office, and then over the past 6 months, we've had several people transition out due to different things, but it was all good things. So, Vicki went on to be the director of continuing professional health education at our campus, which was a great thing for her. Johnson went to another organization and moved into a higher role within faculty affairs and development. We had one of our recruiters, our director for recruiting, she moved to Alabama and is working for a national recruiting company. So our administrative assistant became a project manager and went on to be in our CMO's office. So we feel we're growing people, which is good. And we think that they're better off for having been with us. And so it's not been a negative thing, but it's a growing thing, and then helping us learn as a department, how do we then transition to new people, bring in new and different skills. We've always been about having people with different skill sets because we think that makes us stronger, because we are so different. And that's going to continue. So we've got a lot of good things to look forward to with our office developing and growing and bringing in new people.
You're right, Kathy. I mean, it's so disruptive, but it's so necessary. And I just think just stirring the pot and getting things, excited and new and putting in new ingredients, you just have to reinvigorate. I mean, like you said, you've been in your role for 9 years. And so I would actually get nervous if we had the same all the time, because then I'm starting to think we may become irrelevant, right? New generations coming up and new tools and resources and techniques, and medicine is changing so fast that we have to keep up with the way our faculty learn and want information, and new compliance and regulatory issues, and we have to be up to speed with that. So I agree with you that it's, we need to be reinvigorated. And I love that University of Mississippi Medical Center, and I know Patrick Smith talked about this for years, he takes it to heart to really empower staff and people on his team to grow to the next level. So you're clearly walking the walk there with equipping people with new skills to be better leaders and to move forward. And so that's always a good, it's sad when you lose people, even faculty, but we say this is hopefully if they're leaving for good things, you're proud, they're leaving the nest, and you're proud to have them bear your insignia that they did some work and learned and shared, part of their lives with you at that time. So
right.
It can be so disruptive and scary. And I'm always curious fortunately you've had that, Luann Woodward for a while, and it sounds like she's really invested in faculty and cares a lot about the issues. And so she's clearly empowered your office to do important work and given you space to create new and interesting things. So that sounds like it's really been a good relationship with her.
Yes, it really has been, and has I think allowed our office and people, I believe, I don't want to use the term respect, but I guess that's a good term. They respect our office. They come to us when they want help, because they know that we're here for them. And that's one thing that we do try to strive from the very beginning when they start here, is that if you need anything and you don't know who to go to, you can come to us. We may not have the answer, but we will find out for you. We will help you along the way. And so that's what we really try to do, and is I guess part of our mantra, so to speak.
Well, that definitely has to be. I think that'd be fascinating to study the different schools with the orientation processes and the level of faculty feeling like they belong or they fit or they've been the part of the family, because the fact that you do this every other week and you're touching faculty so soon, right when they come, and welcoming them officially, that to me has just got to be such a great feeling for faculty versus, our method of once a year. And by then they feel like, well, this is nice stuff, but it would have been nice to learn 9 months ago when I first got here. So I give you guys a lot of credit because I know it's a lot of work. I don't know that I could do that every 2 weeks, but it's obviously so important.
Yeah, it is, and that's one of the reasons why we do continue. We were actually doing it weekly for a couple years, and more than a couple of years, but we were, when we went to every other week payroll for everybody on our campus, then that's when we decided, well, let's do this every other week, and we have people start at the beginning of the payroll period. But it's very traditional what we do. We bring people in. We talk with them. A lot of people are doing PowerPoint. So then we do have, we're in the process now trying to revamp the onboarding. We do a survey, and we actually get very good feedback. Every now and then we'll have someone that'll say, you could have just sent that to me in an online module. But on the whole, the people, the new faculty like to meet each other. They like to meet the people that they're going to be working with. But we're having younger and younger faculty come through, and I believe that we need to bring in some new technologies. And that is our challenge, is how do we make it relevant? How do we make people feel engaged and not that they're just sitting there getting a knowledge dump? We do get them up and down throughout the day, but I think we're all looking at how we can do it better, and we really are trying this year to put some new things into place. I don't know what that's going to look like yet, but we're working with our information systems people. Even if people are going to have PowerPoints, how can they be more effective with, more pictures, more animation, as opposed to just your plain old PowerPoint with the bullets type thing.
You said something that is so important to me, and I emphasize this all the time, is that you hit on something that we cannot ignore, and that is the networking. They like to meet each other, you said. And that is so, I see that over and over and over again. So if some people will poo-poo the faculty development experience in our seminars and workshops and lectures and trainings and leadership programs, and yet you come down to the basics, we have, I think, as a culture, so few opportunities where people actually engage personally, eyeball to eyeball, paying attention, being in the moment, because now technology is in between all of us. And so when we actually take time to put people in dyads or small groups or small teams and rooms where they're looking at each other, shaking hands, talking, laughing, it really brings it down to the basics, like historic, sitting around a campfire, telling stories, connecting on a human level. And I don't think we will ever, lose or... Well, I don't think we'll ever come to the point where we think that's not important. And I guess if we do, that's going to be a scary time because we're all human beings. And that's where people learn about, oh, you moved from Texas. Oh, I came from Texas. Oh, you have 2 kids. I have 2 kids. Oh, you're looking for daycare or that neighborhood. That's where they start connecting and even more feeling like, okay, I can see myself building a life here. And the life is about the people around us and the opportunities to engage on a human level. So I love that you're doing that, and it sounds like you're giving them opportunities to also connect personally.
Yeah, and it's, like I said, it's been, I think, very well received. And we do have people that will say, I've been to multiple academic medical centers and never been through this kind of experience. So it's been good, and it does make it worthwhile. And because our different entities on campus are getting to meet with the faculty at the beginning, and then they have less problems in the long run because they've met with them and given them the expectations at the beginning. I think they've also realized the importance of it. Even if you have one person or however many faculty you have starting, then that's fewer people in the long run that are going to get on trouble on the back end because they didn't do something correctly.
Well, is there anything else you'd like to share with us today, Kathy?
I think that is it. I appreciate the opportunity to talk with you and to learning what other people have shared with you, and share all of our stories for the GFA so that we can make all of us stronger and better and hopefully learn from each other.
You got it, Kathy. We're going to look forward to hearing more about your offboarding process there and your new program you're building. I think that's going to be really important. We will definitely all be able to learn a lot from that. So we'll keep our eye out for that in the future. Thanks for tuning in to Faculty Factory Podcast. The mission of the Faculty Factory is to build and support a community of leaders in faculty development who share tools, resources, wisdom, and encouragement in service to our faculty members, schools, and institutions. We encourage you to go to facultyfactory.org to find out more, get in touch with me, ask me any questions. Maybe you want to be interviewed on the podcast. Thanks for tuning in to Faculty Factory Podcast. We'll see you next time. The Faculty Factory podcast and website is sponsored by the Johns Hopkins University School of Medicine Office of Faculty. For more information, visit facultyfactory.org.